Yeah, it's the orange pill to the red pill. But for me, the red pill is like the questions like, can we change society? The whole of society, the psychology of society that hasn't changed in thousands of years. Everything else outside has changed, but our psychology hasn't. And so I think this is the, I said on Twitter, I said it's the Trojan horse to mind.
Hello and welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. I'm your host, Luke the PseudoFinn, and I'm here with Knut Svanholm and Nico from Consensus Network. Today we have a great new guest on for the show, but before we introduce him, first we'd like to talk a little bit about the fun time that Knut and we had in Riga for Baltic Honey Badger. Knut, you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yeah, we met in real life for the first time, Luke, and that was all fun. And Luke helped me out with selling books and T-shirts, and got to say hello to a whole bunch of other Bitcoiners there. And like always, conferences are a great experience, and you get to mingle with other Bitcoiners. That's the best part about them. I was there for 8 days, I think, or 7 days maybe. So I was there for quite long. I was doing the Noob Day, which the Wizard of Oz pulled together a couple of days before the conference with Gigi and Giacomo and a couple of others. And then I had a talk at the main conference, and we were in the booth there representing Consensus with Daniel Prince and Jimmy Song of all people decided to pop in beside us and sell his books as well. So we had a bit of a hat competition, me and Jimmy.
I'm surprised you don't wear the hat on the show, Knut. I guess you're indoors, so you don't need it or something.
It's kind of hard to get it on while you have the headphones on, so that's why I don't have a hat on the show. Otherwise, I feel very naked without my hats. Well, we had a swell time in Riga, and I'll be attending a bunch of more conferences this fall. If all goes according to plan, hopefully end up in Madrid a couple of days before the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam. I'm hoping to be able to get to Madrid as well with my the Spanish translation of Sovereignty Through Mathematics, which was just released an hour ago on the Consensus Network. Very happy to have that done finally. So the Spanish edition is out, guys. And this is the first edition with a newly designed cover as well. We're going to re-release the old books. They've been re-edited and re-proofread and redesigned. So looking forward to all of that. But as I said, I hope to be able to do Madrid and then Amsterdam. After Amsterdam, I'm going to Sofia, Bulgaria for a conference there. And then after that, I'm going to the Liberty in Our Lifetime conference in Prague in the end of October. And after that, I'm planning to go to Madeira to come visit you guys again and bring my family this time, show them around a bit. So much for OPSEC, but that's what I'm doing the next couple of months. And thank you for all the help in Riga, Luke. Really appreciate that. I think we had a really good time. It takes about a week after a conference like that to take it all in. How much all the stuff you've been through and all the people you got to talk to. It's kind of amazing when you think about it in hindsight.
Yeah, it was a great time. There were so many people there who I've known from seeing YouTube videos or interviews or whatever, and awesome to see everyone is a real person in real life, and everyone else from the Bitcoin community too. It's just such a nice environment, and the place was full too. It was absolutely packed. they need a new venue next time, I think, because this one was honestly, it was too small.
Yeah, it was. And the funny thing about Bitcoin conferences is it's like you can see how Bitcoin levels the playing field, because everyone's just, it's just a bromanship, or a bromance, a big bromance, all of it. Well, there are about 5% women in the crowd as well, but mostly it's just, dudes hanging out and being on the same level. Like you can be talking to a billionaire or a prince or whatever, and or just some pleb that owns like a fraction of a Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. Everyone's just friends and everyone's just friendly to one another. So it's a really, really good environment to be in. And thanks to Hodl for pulling together such an awesome event. Yeah,
it was a great time. I'll be going next year, definitely, and I hope I can make it to more conferences than that. But you're certainly running a busy travel schedule, Knut. Yeah, I hope to meet that one day, match it.
Yeah, I'm taking this opportunity to do Bitcoin philosophy full time. Like I'm trying to do it for real. This is my career now, and I have to get used to that. So why not just do them all? And yeah, hope to see you out there. Anyway, we have a guest today who I haven't spoken to for a while, and I'm looking forward to that. Can you tell us a bit more about our guest, Nico?
Thank you, Knut. Thanks for the recap, and thanks for the salty tears. I've been listening to great stories about Riga. I wasn't able to go again, third year in a row. Next year, maybe that's the charm. But yeah, awesome to hear about all the stories. But I'm also super psyched about our guest today, one of our new original authors and my personal friend, a man of the mind, spiritual guide, great guy all around. And we're going to be talking about his book about Decentralized Mind, Rob Brinded. Please be welcome to the show.
Rob, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining the Freedom Footprint Show.
Cheers, Luke. Yeah, I had an ice bath just before coming on, so that I was kind of in that Finnish vibe, and I'm shivering still. So if you see me shivering, it's not because I'm nervous. I'm just trying to get over this ice bath. Police on.
You should change your handle to PseudoVim.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me on, and it's so. I'm so excited to be part of Consensus.
Yeah, Rob, can you tell us a little bit about how you got connected with Consensus, and then, of course, about your book?
Yeah, so where to start? Well, in terms of Madeira, I've been nomad for quite a few years, and I was going to move to Mauritius. Because of the sun and it's beautiful and everything. I can work. I've been online since 2008, so I've been professional, earning my money online for quite a while. But when the lockdown happened, Mauritius locked down super hard, and it was I was like, I can't be moving to somewhere that can separate parents from their kids and stuff like that. So literally that same day, I was in Barcelona and I went, shit, Mauritius is out. We can't go there. And then someone walked past me and said Madeira. And I kind of, when one door closes, you got to keep your eyes and ears open for the next one. And then later that day, I was talking with someone. They said, "Oh, we just come back from Madeira." And I was like, okay, where's Madeira? What's going on? And it just so happens to be an island. So you might hear my little girl screaming in the background. She usually starts when there's a podcast or something. And yeah, so I was on Twitter and I was searching about Madeira. And then Andre said, hey, come to Madeira. So the whole family went there. We were here last year for a few months. And I met Andre in the Central Park, and we just, boom, I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. And Andre was like, oh, you're going to move here. And I was like, let's make things happen here. And so that's really how then I came over for, the association, the conference meet, which was just amazing. And I got to meet Nico, and we hit off really well. And our kids are best friends now. And so we hang out in the playground or in our swimming pool, a little bit of VR. And so that's how I got to know Nico. I'm not sure if that was a good tangent, but
Yeah, and just for a bit of context for our listeners, is that Madeira seems to be turning into one of these, Bitcoin mecca spots. And you've heard Rob, you mentioned Andre, and I'm sure Andre will eventually make it either onto this show or he'll be around, but not to ruin anyone's OPSEC, but he's a Madeira guy and publicly so. But yeah, and I've had the same experience now of hearing all the good things about Madeira. So I think I'm on my way as well, at least for a visit, and maybe we'll see about something more long term than that. But yeah, thanks, Rob. So I guess if you wanted to give us a little bit about either your any more about your background, your Bitcoin background, and into the book somehow.
sure. So my background's in elite sport. I was head of strength and conditioning and injury prevention for Chelsea Football Club back in late 90s and the 2000s. And that actually is how I kind of got into the idea of this centralized mind and decentralized mind, which I talk about in the book, The Decentralized Mind. And it's kind of a little bit, if I can kind of set the stage for this centralized mind, how I see it, and then you're going to see how the decentralized mind comes along. So there was two things that happened to me while I was at Chelsea. One, I trained with some of the best in the world in different areas to do with being able to resolve injuries or understand why the body positions itself like it does. I worked with eye specialists like dentists, fascial experts, movement experts in France. I travel, and because I was working for a club that was very high intensity, I could fly anywhere I wanted to and work with people. And I did a very advanced assessment of the posture of the athletes. At the time, we had like 280 million pounds worth of players, and my job was to keep them fit. And it was very high pressure. Like I said, Jose Mourinho was the manager. Roman Abramovich could come in with his billions. And so my job was to try and keep them playing. And what I noticed, in the closet, I'd been doing a lot of work on myself, like looking for why I had injuries or why I was unhappy. And so I had this I worked for the medical team, so it was all very medical and scientific. And then in my own time, I was working on the more, I suppose you could call it spiritual, or looking for why I was, I had certain emotions, feeling depression, anxiety, etc. And what I noticed as I worked with players is when a player was stressed, he was more likely to be injured. And so the way my brain works is I'm very good at patterning. I pattern things. So I'm not such a good linear thinker like the medical team. They're very linear. I was always taking in lots of information at once and making patterns out of it. And so I noticed that players were, when they had certain emotions or things going on off the pitch, they were more likely to come in and see me with pain. or literally get injured. This could be seen, if there's a player who has a very important game, and there's pressure on him to perform, he's more likely to get injured. And if there's someone who's vying for his position, that pressure will show up in an injury. And so if you look for these patterns, they're there. And so I had this very advanced assessment where I would place players on these expensive weight systems to check their weight, to see if they it's called a weight shift test, and I do videos and photos, check eyes, check teeth, if there's pre-bites, check for scars, and use laser pens to neutralize the galvanic current, which can twist the body. It's like pretty advanced. And I remember this player walked in that at the time was the best in the world, and he stood on the weights, and a 4 pound difference is significant. So he stepped on, he was 8 kilos, 8 kilos heavier on one leg. Anyway, so he's standing there and he's shifted over 8 kilos heavier on one leg, which is an enormous asymmetry. And so everyone in their speciality, and this is kind of like, the doctor standing there with the needle, the chiropractor saying it's the neck, the podiatrist thinking it's short leg. And I stepped up to do my assessment, and this thought in my head said, you do ask him about his emotions. It was like a thing that came up. So in front of the whole medical team, I said, okay, what's the best sex you've ever had? So I was trying to elicit a thought that was sort of positive. And so an hour later, he replied, that's my joke for today, okay? So, the players, they have a lot of girlfriends. And I wasn't interested in what he was saying, but, now I can see what he was doing. So if you look when people are searching for a memory, that it's like they're Googling, their eyes are going tick, 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 tick. They're looking up to the left, Googling, tick, tick, tick. And then he goes, I remember. And as I looked at the weights, he balanced perfectly on 0 when he hit the thought. Okay. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Like, with all my skill, everything, all the hundreds of thousands I spent on my skill set, I could never have changed him by him connecting with that thought. And so what I did, I flipped it to a negative, and I said, what's the worst? I think I said, what's the worst moment of your life? And he got that really quick, like within, yeah, I remember. And you could feel him collapse internally, so I was always very, I could pick up on energy, and I'm not going into healing or anything, but you can sense when someone deflates almost internally. And he went to 9 kilos. And I looked at the medical team. I was like, oh, did you see that? And they just all glazed over. And the doctor just went, his eyes just went, Argh. It's like talking to someone about decentralization who owns Ethereum. Just sort of, and so that moment shook me, shook my understanding of the physical and the non-physical. And also at the same time, I was training. I went to Michigan, Adrian, where I heard that there was a guy who had fixed Michael Jordan's knee. And he taught me, so I'd always been like, you control the mind. Your mind controls your body. So when I'm training athletes, I was like, keep your knees straight, keep your back straight, pull your stomach in, keep your shoulders back. And he taught me that that's not how the body works. You can't know the complex systems in the body, and you have to, the body is given, it's all given. You have to just facilitate this complex system. So I'm kind of cutting that one short, that story. I'll talk more about it in the book. But what I came to understand is the moment my centralized mind got involved in a complex system that the arrogance to think I could say, yeah, keep your knee still. And he's got billions of cells and this nervous system. His body knows exactly what to do. For me to go, keep your knee straight, is like the government getting involved in the money system. And so what I came to understand was I had to get the mind out of the body. And so that was my first understanding that, one, there was much more going on than I understood of the physical. This was like 25, it's a long time ago now, 25 years ago, 20 years ago. And so this getting the mind out of the body. And so that started my journey of, okay, this mind isn't all it's cracked up to be. And that actually, and I'd suggest that any time that you enter in using your mind in this reality, you always create the opposite. So, some would say the church is a force for good. And then some would argue that it's force for evil. The moment you try and shape anything using your centralized big brain expert science mind, whenever you try and shape someone, you create the opposite. And so this, I'm going to throw it back to you, but that's my physical training and my conditioning of athletes. I realized that I had to move towards what happened to this guy on the scales. That happened a long time ago, and now I can access that 1 and 0. That's a 1 and 0 strong week, and that the Eastern philosophies, the Chinese knew this thousands of years ago, but they didn't have computers at that time. So, if you have any,
that's all fascinating stuff, Rob. I'm interested in how the book is coming. Like, are you almost done with the book? Did you just start writing the book? Like, where are you in the process?
Well, it's funny. I was writing a very long article on Bitcoin, the Tao of Bitcoin. And the more I wrote it, the more I realized that I was writing it to have kind of a sort of to sort of give a different angle on the Bitcoin story, like a more spiritual. And I was using, I was probably trying to copy Robert Breedlove a little bit. And then I came to, Nick, I talked to Nico about the book, and he said, I'd love to have it. And I started again. I kind of threw that away. And so I started not long ago, but actually it's gone much quicker than I thought it would. And and I'd love to talk to you more about this, Knut, because this is the first real, one that I put a lot of my energy and thought. It's all coming from the 25 years. So it's just going, and what I'm finding is I'm like, whoa, oh, right. And then I go away and I go, oh, shit, hang on. And then it goes in deeper, and then that bridges, and I'm like,
this is something I encounter all the time. People ask me, when did you start writing the book? And I'm like, when I was born, I guess. What's the starting point? I don't know. Is it when I penned the first word? Probably not. There's always a thought preceding everything.
Yeah,
and an insight. Yeah.
When we went for the beer, my brain was a bit cooked. So you were coming out with this stuff, and I was like, I just spent a few days with, all the Bitcoiners. And I was like, oh my God, I'm cooked. And so I kind of came away thinking, shit, I missed an opportunity with you over that beer. So I'd like to redo that. We found this really small place, didn't we?
You'll get a chance to do that in like a month,
okay.
bit more
so
than
we'll
a month.
That again.
Yeah, but I love to talk about people's writing process, because I'm figuring out my own, and I figured out a couple of few things. First of all, I'd like to recommend a very short book by John Cleese called On Creativity.
Okay.
The audiobook is just an hour long, and it's very funny. It's read by John himself, so he laughs at his own jokes, which is always like. I mean, I love John Cleese, but the book is full of these little insights about how creativity works, and it's brilliant. What else? Like, because I found it easier to write when I don't know what the chapter is about. Like, I start with an idea, but if I know the ending to the chapter, then the writing process becomes slightly boring because it feels like I've read it already. So I want to figure something out in putting the ideas onto paper and sorting them out. I'm always trying to find something writing in doing the actual writing.
Yeah, I realized that I may be writing chapters that are not in order. And so I'm very, I can jump. I can jump around and not be linear. So what I've noticed is I have to have a little bit of an idea what the book is about. So I'm like, I'll be like, and I do. Someone told me last night that I'm not writing a book because I've been doing a little bit like this as well. What I do is I go to the Lido. I go next
the Lido.
The Lido is the outdoor swimming pool on the rock.
Oh right. Oh yeah. I remember that.
I go there early in the morning, and it's beautiful sun. So I'm increasing energy in my mitochondria, good for the brain. Next to sea, and I start walking around, and then I have Otter AI, the amazing transcription thing on my phone, and I'm just like, and like you said, I think about this shit all day. When people think I'm not working, like they think nothing's going on. I'm like, if people go in my head, I think it would be. I think everyone usually as well.
It's almost as you yourself feel embarrassed for not putting in actual work, but when you really think about it, you are putting in the work because you go around and think about these things all the time.
Yeah, but it's like, well, now we're getting into some deeper stuff, like what is enough, what is work. So I start, and then an old woman will come and stand next to me and start singing. As you start attracting people to bug you. But I start moving around, and I'm just offloading all this thought, and then this chaotic things just beautifully coming together, and then it's down, and then I stop and I go for a swim, and then I never push it; it just comes, and then I go home, and it's on my desktop from my iPhone, and then I start going through it. And what I found is, Knut, is I'll read it and everything, and then I'm like, yeah, but what's this got to do? Why am I telling this story? And then I have to link it. And that linking is what I'm getting a little bit better at. It's like, well, that story with the weight shift. Okay, why am I telling that story? Because it's a fascinating story for me. Well, it's because of this. But then do people see my jump? Because I think sometimes I'm like, I've been thinking about this all my life, that someone's sitting in front of me going, yeah, but what's that got to do with? And so
that's the tricky part.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Is with my book, it's like I'm telling a story. So the woman yesterday was saying, "Yes, so you're not writing a book." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm writing a book." I get back in, but it's this idea that you have to kind of be on a typewriter, banging away in a lodge, the mountains, and drinking loads of coffee.
I hear someone planted a redwood tree on Madeira, so there might be a forest suitable for futuristic dystopian writers.
Yeah.
In just a few hundred years from now, we'll have a William Gibson on Madeira.
I did. If we're talking about the writing, this idea of the decentralized mind is we have. Let's say that it's. So we have all of the conditioning of the world inside of us, all of the history of humankind conditioning within us. We have everything within us. this gets triggered in relation to others. So, someone's rude, you get triggered. So we learn about ourselves, the whole of ourselves, in relation to others. So meditation, the word spiritual and in healer is like if you take your computer to a technician and you give you your computer and he's okay, it'll take about 6 months. I'm just going to put my hands on it and it's going to heal. You'd be like, all right, you can't fix my computer. I'll take it somewhere else. So healing implies time. And so I think healing, there's no time. The moment you get told the truth about whatever something is, it resolves it unless your bone is broken. So if there's a physical aspect to it. So why was I talking about that? So centralized mind. Yeah. So when it comes to this self, so meditation is understanding the self. It's knowing the truth about yourself. Now, remember, this is what I do for a living. I work with, the billionaires, the world-class poker players, the athletes, the CEOs, the Bitcoiners. The moment you try and change something about yourself using your mind, you perpetuate the imprisonment, or you perpetuate the conditioning. So this decentralized mind is where you observe your conditioning and your behavior around a particular subject. I can go more into this. I'm being a little bit abstract. And so with the book, my relationship to the book brought up all of my conditioning from my school and my parents, and how I would like the teachers that told me, yeah, you're not good academically. You'll never make anything of yourself. You're lazy. You can't remember anything. And it just brought up a lot of, you can't write. When I told my mum this, and I'm going to say it, I told her, she goes, oh, how many books are you going to sell? And so my parents conditioned. And
that's so sad. I can totally relate to that, and that's just sad. The thing is, never listen to the naysayers.
no, 100%. But the naysayer is in me. Like that's the real naysayer, right? So I'm writing, and what I noticed was, first of all, this came up, and I observed it, I started on the first article where I observed a lot of this behavior because it was blocking me from writing. I had the writer's block. I just didn't want to do it. So I had to observe, why was I writing? I'll do it for the book, but I didn't most of this behavioral observation work with the article. And I saw, I want status. I want, I have ambition. I can prove to myself that I'm intelligent. So there's the things up here that I'm aiming for: recognition, status, glory, ego. And there's on the other side is I don't want to be stupid. I want to get over this educational, education that's limited me. And so I observed all of that. It took me 3 weeks of observation. It's deep meditation. Meditation is observation in real time. It's not sitting in a cave with a long beard. That's just.
It can be.
It can be, but if you want real meditation, have kids.
Yeah, I know.
That's don't go up in a cave in the Himalayas. Go have children and try and work, and you got your kid throwing food at you, and that's when you learn about yourself, right?
May I hop in here for a while?
Sure.
Because I can totally relate to that. I got interested in meditation, not medication. Meditation after having kids, and I was commuting to my last Fiat job, which included a 11-minute ferry ride, where I just sat in the car for 11 minutes doing absolutely fuck all. So that's where I decided to start meditating during those 11 minutes, once going to work and coming back from work. And I found it to be really, really good for transitioning between my work self and my family self, which is something that is totally fiat and that you don't have to do if you work in Bitcoin, I guess. but so that's my experience with meditation and getting to know my brain and how it works. And
Sure.
as you say, it certainly helps you overcome these preconditioned notions about yourself that you have, that you cannot do this, or you cannot do that. It's just do something and see if it works. Throw it out there. See, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. That's like uh that's a life hack I want to give to absolutely everyone on the planet. Don't be so fucking afraid of your limitations, because most
Sure.
people, and that's another thing from Cleese's book about when he and it's in one of his stand-ups when he talks about his the people in the town he grew up in, Western Supermare,
I
where
know
where
what's yeah.
yeah, where it seemed like everyone wanted to get into their coffins safely without ever having been seriously embarrassed. And I could relate to that so much that when I look at other people, that seems to be their goal in life. Like uh, they want their little boxed in reality and want things to be the way they are and not change and stuff. But the world is a dynamic place. I mean, and there's so much to explore and so much to. I mean, life, you can live a rich life full of experiences, or you can choose not to.
Yeah. And we're addicted to certainty, right?
Yeah, we are.
Western Superman, they're just like everywhere in the world, you know?
Yeah, and what I found is like people are very good at seeing risk in change, but what they don't see risk in is like not changing.
Yeah.
And within not changing lies some of the biggest risks of them all. Like living doing a rat race, a hamster's wheel type of and you takes a toll on your family life and on your marriage and everything. And if you never take any risks, you never get out of that, and that's a certain, bad outcome for life. Like
100%.
and yeah, another thing. While I still remember, something you said before reminded me of a saying from my father, which is, "Behind every successful man stands a surprised spouse."
Surprised.
Yeah.
It's wisdom in the Svanholm's family tree.
Anyway, I think that you could of course it's a bit of a joke, but you can surprise yourself. That's what's contained within that. It's not only a surprised spouse. I think most successful people are pretty surprised themselves that it actually worked. Their little fiendish little plan that they came up with sometime in life, and like, I'm going to do this, and then did it, and it worked.
Yeah.
But it's probably easier than you think, if you're a thinking person.
Yeah. I the writing experiences has surprised me. It's surprised me in that I've enjoyed it, and I'm enjoying it more and more. And just the other day, I don't know if I told Nico, but sometimes I get on and go, whoa, he'll get a little garbled message from me. But my wife definitely, I went in and said, I'm enjoying this. I'm writing a book. I'm like, I said it like loads of times. I'm writing a book in there. I'm writing a book. And I know that's for maybe other people, but for me and my story and my and the conditioning I had in my school, it surprised me. I never thought I'd enjoy writing, but I actually reframe it. I don't say writing a book is I'm telling a story about something I know really well.
It's very satisfying because it's like the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like telling your story. It's a part of your journey. And I think it fascinating that you're writing a book and that we have this to talk about for the rest of our lives now. This experience of of writing books.
I don't know if you experienced this, but I got I had to watch myself because I saw my ego, like, but I was like, I've got more books. I've got another book. I know not. And then Nico was over. We were by the pool. The kids were swimming. I was like, I've got another book. And both them, and then I was like, okay, just come back and finish this one.
Yeah. One book at a time is probably a good idea. If I'm not sidetracking you too much, can we connect this to your Bitcoin journey somehow? Like,
sure.
What did Bitcoin teach you? Is Bitcoin part of why you're writing a book now? And like, how did that? What's your relationship with Bitcoin now, and how did it change you?
It sort of came in and it came in on my journey of understanding decentralized mind. I didn't understand decentralized at the time, but this work I was doing and this journey, and then I was in Thailand with a high network client, and he was having a big birthday bash, and there was a high network friend, investor, poker player, and I said, "Hey, what are you into?" And he goes, "I'm all in on this. I'm all in on this thing." And I was like, I listen to everything he says about money. If he's all in on something, I'm like, I need to look at this. And he told me, I remember a couple of things. He said that and some other coins. All right. But he said, this is the important one, Bitcoin. And he said, one thing I remember, he said, you will only be able to hold it if you've done the proof of work. If you've done the work to understand it and to secure it, because you have to take responsibility and secure it, then you if you don't do that, you'll lose it. Understand that rule of this universe. You only be able to hold it for the value that you have for yourself and that you've taken responsibility. So I started my journey like the summer of 2017. I was there, and then I bought all the way to the top, and then it crashed, and then I started to. It actually came at a time when I was doing a lot of work on value. So I looked to my life, and there was a lot of things that were doing well, but I didn't understand value. I didn't really value myself, and didn't understand money. So I started to dive into money and understand money, and I read Anthony Robbins' book and other books around money, value, and what I just started to put all my energy into understanding value. And Bitcoin was there, and I had a friend who was into Bitcoin. He said, "Can you explain to me how the blockchain works?" So I remember back to height of 2017, he was taking me as a coder, a computer scientist, taking me through the blockchain and understanding it. And I didn't understand it, but I knew that it's like jiu-jitsu. If you just keep doing it, you're going to understand it more and more. And so I got to understand it, and I was buying all the way to the bottom. And when I was feeling sick, when it was, like $4,000, I was really proud of myself. I was there buying, feeling sick.
So was I.
What I understand. Oh my God! What if we're getting into Bitcoin? It's like, first of all, I understood it was the king, and then I started to understand the nature of centralized and the mind. So my understanding of my own work and how the mind and the ego always creates, if you shape using this kind of virtual reality, you're going to create the opposite. That's all I do with my work, is help to.
This reminds me so much. I have to give you a tip. During Baltic Honey Badger, Gigi had an amazing talk about the dualities of Bitcoin and how Bitcoin is one and the other. It can simultaneously be one thing and the opposite of that thing. Like, to some people it's a religion, to me it's financial atheism. So it can be opposites like that all the time.
And it's neutral. There's it's there. And this idea that it was exploded outwards, it was created or found, discovered. It has that quality that is, the more you look at that, like I get shivers.
Emergent.
Oh, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm so like people don't get that, but because the big brains I'm not being, I understand that I also have what I'm judging others on, okay? Because everyone
Yeah.
has everything. But if I look at Vitalik, he's very intelligent. He's got a big head. He's not really connected with his body so much. He's very intellectual, and he's trying to shape things, centralized mind. And though there's people who are caught in their mind and centralized, and then if you're into Bitcoin and you get that decentralized, there's a difference there in how you see the world, how you see systems. um,
Yeah, you understand that it's an idea we share among us. Otherwise, it's worthless. It's
yeah,
like the rules of chess. That's the analogy I often use.
absolutely. And the when you understand that this Bitcoin doesn't give a shit. I mean, there's so many angles. I'm kind of not doing a good job at expressing how important it is. When you know, all these people are sort of bouncing off, their egos are bouncing off it. This thing is doing everything while doing nothing. Although it is, each block 10 minutes, right? But there's no mind trying to shape anything, but it shapes us without shaping.
Yeah,
This is,
exactly. This is Luke. Can we put a link to Gigi's talk in the show notes afterwards? Because it's such a brilliant talk about these dualities within Bitcoin.
Yeah,
I'll be going into that more in my book as well, because it's just that's why I'm so bullish on this invention, because it's much and
Discovery.
it's the orange pill to the red pill. But for me, the red pill is like the questions like, can we change society? The whole of society, the psychology of society, that hasn't changed in thousands of years. Everything else outside has changed, but our psychology hasn't. And so I think this is I said on Twitter, I said it's the Trojan horse to the mind.
Exactly.
It is, people don't get it. And so people are talking about this on such shallow levels.
Exactly. I totally agree. This is what, by the way, what my talk was about in Riga, and I'm refining it now for Amsterdam, because we came to a couple of insights in Riga, having these great conversations with like Max Hildebrand and Gigi and Giacomo and all of these people, and you come to these fascinating conclusions, like us being nice to each other and us giving each other stuff. It's just Gresham's law playing out on the Bitcoin standard.
You told me that in the pub. You had a beer and you said, "Bro, I was just having this thought." And then you said, "It's going to change the way we interact with."
Yeah. But I hadn't refined it down to Gresham's law.
Yeah.
The insight from Riga is like, that's just Gresham's law. Like,
right.
we're more willing to give away our time and effort than our precious stacks.
Right.
So being nice to each other is the quote unquote bad money in this sense that drives out the good. So we keep our stacks. So we run this mathematical experience in the back of our heads, and that somehow enables us to be nicer people. And I just find that endlessly fascinating.
So,
and
that's why with you, Knut, I was you wasted it. Like, I did take that in. It's just nothing was coming back. But you're very good at seeing how this is going to change. Like it's the unforeseen consequences. The leverage of this thing is and you're like, well, then it will do this and this. And what I do inside I kind of go in, but I'm not so good at wondering what the hell's going to happen with this thing.
Well, I'm just guessing as everyone else, but I find it endlessly. Thank you, by the way. I find it endlessly fascinating to think about. So I can't help myself.
It's like first principle thinking. Like, if this is like with my clients, I'm like, okay, so when you said that, well, that means that. And they go, yeah. And then if you step forward, if you jump too far, maybe you'll lose them. But what you're saying is, If you can you explain that more to me, because I'm not familiar.
Gresham's law states that bad money drives out good. So in an economy such as like Venezuela, for instance, where you have the Venezuelan bolivar, people tend to want to spend that before they spend their US dollars, which will hold value. US dollars are a better store of value than Venezuelan bolivars, Turkish lira, or what are they called in Zimbabwe? I don't remember what the coin is called, but anyway, the point is that worse money that is hyperinflating or inflating at a faster rate than another type of money, people tend to want to spend that earlier, and it's quite easy to see because if you're having a crappy currency in your crappy country, you want to get rid of that first, and you want to save in dollars, but because at least the dollars can buy you something next month. Yeah. So getting paid in Venezuelan bolivars is like getting paid with an ice cube, and it keeps on melting, and you need to trade it for something else as soon as you can before it melts away. So that's what people tend to do. But on a Bitcoin standard, you have damn near perfect money. It's not. I love this quote from my friend Tomer Strolight, who said that Bitcoin never needed to be perfect. It just needed to be good enough to last forever. Mm-hmm. And it's a subtle distinction, but it's almost no distinction at all. So for all practical purposes, Bitcoin is perfect money because it keeps its value over time and over space. So you can teleport it to anywhere one in the world for free using the Lightning Network, and it can store its value for generations. And the more we act as if it actually could store value for 5 generations, the likelier it is that it actually can. Because the more we believe in it, the higher the value, the more money to the developers, and the more you can actually secure the network. So it's like Pascal's wager actually works if by God you mean Bitcoin. So this is another insight from Riga. Like if I act as if Bitcoin exists, to paraphrase Jordan Peterson's, I act as if God exists. I don't see the point in doing that, but I see a point in acting as if Bitcoin works. Sure. Because if I do, I by proxy, I drive up the price and I increase its likelihood to actually work over time. So it actually works. Yeah. And Gresham's law, stating that bad money is spent, people are more willing to spend bad money than good. When you're on a Bitcoin standard, and you know that the Bitcoin stack you have is probably the most precious thing you have. Like spending 10,000 sats on a pizza today is doing the exact same move as this Laszlo guy did 10 years ago when he spent 10,000 Bitcoins on a pizza. The economics are the same. They're as scarce. Sure. So in the long run, it's the exact same move.
If I may just interject a little bit here, because I hear a lot of Bitcoiners talk about Gresham's law, which is all good and fine, but the inverse Gresham's law, which is known as Fear's law, is often disregarded, and it's basically when the good money drives out bad. And this is what we experience when we pay in Bitcoin, because it is the superior money, not only in that it holds value, but what it's saving for. Saving only makes sense in the context of spending it at some point, right?
But Fear's law is what takes over after Gresham's law has already played out.
No, I'm saying that it's already taken over. Like what you said about Laszlo, I don't think he didn't make a mistake. Like a lot of people saying that he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yes, when I say you're making the exact same mistake, I'm not saying anything about the magnitude of the quote-unquote mistake. It might not have been a mistake at all, but you're making the exact same economic decision as he made. Albeit on a longer time scale, maybe because of like 10,000 sats. It's a lot smaller than 10,000 bitcoins. It's 100 millionth of 10,000 bitcoins, but it's a move on a time scale that is 100 million times longer, but it's the same move. It's hard to wrap your head around, but from what I understand of Thayer's law, it's when a country completely hyperinflates and there's no point in using the local currency for anything but toilet paper anymore, people will start using the better money for trading. So when in Venezuela, for instance, if the bolivar is so crap that people don't use it at all, then people will start using dollars, and that it will happen on Bitcoin too. My point is that Gresham's law on Bitcoin might just be us being nice to each other and giving us each other our time and effort, like we're doing now, for instance, or helping each other out with loads of stuff, which we all four of us have experienced. We're more willing to do that than to touch our stacks, and that is Gresham's law playing out on a Bitcoin standard.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. My point is that Thier's law it's more relevant to Bitcoin. Like if you never spend Bitcoin, this like Gresham's law kind of drives you into this hodler mindset where you're not ever going to spend, and this is how you inadvertently actually hurt the whole Bitcoin idea and the network, because you're not actually using it. Like it's not a lie that nobody uses Bitcoin, but it's also not really true, because I can already see like most people who, for example, work with us, they of course they prefer to receive Bitcoin rather than euros or dollars, and who could blame them? It's the superior money. So we are already transitioning to the world where people are not any longer accepting the inferior money. Of course, you want to get it off your hands as soon as possible.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying that it's more beneficial to think in terms of inverse Gresham law than actual Gresham law. Although that's a separate thing from the kindness of Bitcoiners. I think that's nice insight.
I think this is we need a bit of both. And this is Bitcoin. Using Bitcoin is both spending Bitcoin and hodling Bitcoin, and you can make quite a compelling case for both being necessary for the long-term success of the currency, or if it even is a currency.
It's not a currency; it's money.
It's even more than that. It's Bitcoin. It's there's no better word for it than Bitcoin, because it's so much more than all these other things that we label it with. But where was I going with this? Yeah, I've seen that shift happen. The more I do this, and the more, like, from the pre-sale of the latest book was like 95% of the paid in Bitcoin, and 90 of those.
And not only that, mostly one on-chain transaction.
Riga, we had a couple of exchanges in euros, but Luke, what would you say? I would say like at least 85% in Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, and the only one who needed to do on-chain, but it was because of Lightning. He didn't have enough of his channel or something like that, and it was great to see.
We had some problems with Zeus wallet connecting to people's nodes, and Tor slowing it down a lot. But that's like, well, that's people trying to do advanced shit when they don't really need to. But it's beautiful to see nerds doing nerdy things and like bypassing the entire cardiovascular system, monetary system of the world by just bypassing the whole thing, and we don't need to do that anymore. We can just Bitcoin and not.
No, it was so great. It was so easy too, because it wasn't just you there, Knut. There were a few other authors who were all there, and I ended up only actually doing anything selling your books myself. But what I had done is I threw out a new wallet for your stuff, one for Daniel's stuff, one for Jimmy's stuff, in case I sold anyone's. It took me 10 seconds, and I could have accepted Lightning payments for all of you. Easiest thing ever.
Be your own. People say be your own bank, but you just invented be your own accountant like in 10 seconds.
and the thing I couldn't do was accept any of that dirty fiat over the credit card network. So they could give me euros if they wanted to, but I had no way to accept a credit card. And the funny thing was, everyone understood that and actually thought that was perfect, because you're at a Bitcoin conference, right?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. You couldn't accept stealing from your kids' money, but you could accept every other form of payment. Like
exactly, it was good.
Theft from your kids' money was not accepted at the conference. It's beautiful.
And to maybe try to synthesize this, it did show it in action that Bitcoin is usable, and it is used when it's necessary. I mean, I think a lot of people are into the spend and replace type idea where you don't want your stack to go down, but when you actually have to use it, it's so convenient. And the the synthesis that I'm thinking of when I'm hearing all of you with your great ideas, I think Knut and Nico, you're both right in your own way, and in the sense of that the Gresham's law, as this is playing out, I think when we're talking about this as the circulation of money, we don't want to necessarily spend the Bitcoin for the hodlingness of it all, but then it turns into the usage of it. And what I'm actually trying to get into is that this comes back to the decentralized nature of it, is that everyone's making these decisions on an individual level. No one is coming out from on high and saying, you have to hodl, you have to use it. You get some people who try to influence to say one or the other, but then it turns into these decisions that get made on a almost subconscious level, whether to use it or not. And so I think the interplay of these two things together at the same time is, first of all, interesting, and it's going to be great to see how this plays out over the time scales of our lifetimes. But the way I see it working is that neither of those laws are, to call them laws is even maybe too hard, but that they are working is just miraculous because this thing isn't controlled by anyone.
No, it's you said something in the beginning there: spend and replace. That's the way to do both, and that's a great way to onboard new people as well. If you spend your sats, replace them, as quickly as possible, and that will drive fiat money into Bitcoin in a beautiful way while onboarding at the same time. So that's the real thing.
Exactly what I was trying to say. Like, spending is different from depleting. Like, it's a bonehead move to deplete your stack and just keep spending if you don't replace it. Like you gotta stack more. You have to have more sats, today than you had yesterday. Like, that's the goal. But you can still use it every day, which is what I do.
Yes, and you could argue that saving is a high time preference thing because you're not investing the money.
Yes.
I would say my there's a caveat to that, and that is that during Bitcoin's adoption phase, it's not a high time preference behavior, because you can still be low time preference. It's just that you plan on spending your Bitcoin after everyone's on board, when they will be valued much higher. So it is low time preference in any way. But it's another one of those dualities.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's going to build the moon, right? I mean, if everybody's just going to sit on their stacks and wait for something magical to happen, your hyper Bitcoinization, that's not going to come by itself. Like, we all need to be a part of it. And if you just choose to, stack and hold and God forbid, have a fiat job and be addicted to the fiat salary.
Vote and all other stupid stuff you
right.
in fiat. Yeah. All right, back to Rob. What are your thoughts on all
this?
this?
Point on that conversation. Amazing conversation. It was just the idea of for me and my experience, if we want to change the psychology of man, of humankind, and have the real revolution, because the mind is tyrannical for humans. And so that's the ultimate tyranny. But just coming back to Bitcoin, humans, I was speaking to Navius and I said, the only way we can change humanity is not by using centralized minds and shaping people, which is what the government tries to do. It's like, be inclusive, be this, be that. And it just creates the opposite: animosity, violence, etc. So we have to do it from within. And so the revolution explodes outwards from us, dissolving our conditioning within us in the blockchain, and then we change humanity. The only way we can change this reality and humanity is on an individual level. And so my point with Bitcoin is, yeah, we hodl because we get how amazing this is, but in using it, which I like to do and tip and whenever I can send and pay, is Bitcoin is in a way teaching us that on an individual level, we can change the whole world by just on our own. Like, no one's telling us to do that. I just send money to Nico, or I send Bitcoin to Andre to did it. And so that again is Bitcoin showing the individual that by not doing anything, that we can change that massive system you talked about. The whole society can change by individuals using Bitcoin. I think that's the orange pill to people realizing on an individual level we can actually make a difference, but it's not by having a centralized tyrannical control. It's by each individual's self-authority, no authority. And can we have a system where our children are not subjugating to an authority? That's where it starts, but we're not going to get into kids. But I just see Bitcoin is just there reflecting back at us all of this. It's just the most amazing thing. And so when you say, oh, by the way, you into Bitcoin, when you're in a group and they go, and you're just like, oh, dude, all I do is just, Bitcoin? And you see their face and you go, okay, no, I'm not going to go there because they're just reading newspapers,
I've noticed a shift in the tone of the replies whenever people ask about Bitcoin this year, as opposed to like 3 years back. Like there's with cab drivers and whatnot, everyone I talk to about it, there's an interest. People are taking it way more seriously than they did a couple of years back. They know that it's not a nothing burger.
Yes. And people are questioning more the narrative. And Nico, there's a group building in Madeira. There's an ex-military guy. He said he's got loads of friends who wants to meet and to talk about. They want me to explain what Bitcoin is, and because they're hearing all of this stuff and they don't know how to buy it and everything. So I'm gonna maybe you come along and we'll.
Yeah, happy to. It's really difficult to find people that I like to talk anymore. Like it's come to the point that I just completely lose interest if Bitcoin's off the table, because it's literally the only thing that I want to talk about.
Yeah,
I mean that's the big impact thing that everybody should be interested in.
I think they see the number going up a little bit, but I sent him money, and he's maybe Venezuelan or something, and I said, look, bang bang, like lightning network. It was like that, and he was like, you can see it's starting to tick over. I said, Western Union's done, that, and blah, blah,
Before you go in Knut, I just want to say that about the nerdy stuff. I bought this shirt from I supported Bitcoin racing, and I did an experiment. I'm also using Zeus wallet that you mentioned earlier, and by the way, it's still in alpha, so there's a lot of bugs and it doesn't always work. But it did work for this one, and basically I was using Lightning Bitcoin that was connected over Tor network to my own personal node that it was in another location in another network. So I could be anywhere in the world and send unstoppable money to anybody for any reason, for any product, for any when people wrap their head around this, it's going to be like retail is done.
Nice.
It's truly done. And it's just a matter of time. It's so beautiful. What we should do more than instead of saying, do you accept Bitcoin? No, sorry. And then we pay in fiat. We should refuse the service if they don't refuse to pay at all if they don't accept Bitcoin. All right. Do you accept Bitcoin? No. Okay. We'll find another restaurant then. And we need to make those sorts of moves more popular within the community, I think, because then you make it truly up to the bartender or the restaurant owner or the retailer. Well, if you don't accept this, if you don't accept my money, I'm not going to buy your shit. It's as simple as that.
And maybe to mellow it down a little bit, you could just say that you make a sale right now if I can teach you how to accept Bitcoin. But basically the same message. But I think with that you can catch more flies.
I think so many merchants are just desperate to sell their shit because they got a huge pile of shit that they sit on, and they need they need to store that somewhere, and that place probably needs electricity, and electricity is going to shit. So electricity is a shit coin nowadays. So if you just get them curious enough about Bitcoin, I think that's a great way to onboard people. Okay, I'll buy your stuff, but only if you accept Bitcoin.
The recent pumps of the electricity market have looked a lot like some shit coins. That's been fun. Hey, I think Rob, you've said this phrase a couple of times, and I'm hoping you can elaborate just slightly. The orange pill to the red pill. So, how do you talk about this in your book? Because I hope this is part of what we're going to hear about that you're releasing.
Yeah. So the orange pill being is when you go number goes up, and then you start looking into it, and you start understanding what money is, and then how this system is like um, the Wizard of Oz, and you start to see more and more uncertainty in how we've seen the government and the way society works, and so you start to question, and you start to get comfortable with you start to see how uncertain, and how the um, the control they're trying to control, the creating the opposite. And if you really start looking closely, the more you suppress, the more you will create the opposite action, the yin yang. And so for me, when I say orange pill, it's like that Trojan horse to the mind. It starts creating a space between what your mind thought reality was to actually it's not what you think it is. And you pull the curtain back, and there's a guy pulling, the wizard was just a dude, and it was all make believe. And you start to question everything. And so the moment you start questioning everything, then you're more susceptible to question your own mind and your conditioning. And so the orange pill to the red pill is that when you really go down the rabbit's hole, it's like the Matrix, and you either take the blue pill and go. You like most people are so addicted to certainty and so desperate to be told exactly what they want to hear. But when you say Bitcoin, it's actually for most, it's too scary. So they just you can see they'll run away or they'll react violently. And so it's going to be, it's already there, and it's going to go into everyone, and it will, it's like I bought some oysters yesterday. So I don't know if you guys eat oysters, and I was like trying not to cut my hand. You're supposed to have these special steel gloves, but what you're doing is you're just trying to leverage it open, and you get a certain amount and then pop, and you're in, and it becomes easy. And so the orange Bitcoin for me, that is what I'm so excited about is the people I've met. They're they've shattered that worldview, and so they can see these complex systems much more clearly. They're not trying to put their hands in with their centralized mind, so they become more decentralized in their thinking with their mind. So that decentralized mind, and then they become easier to then go to the ultimate, which is that all your conditioning, all your the way you live your life. If you really start to look at it, there's tyranny there, and you start to in meditation. And when I say meditation, I'm talking about there's different types of meditation, but for me, my school is called Meditation OS. So there's two levels. There's one, it's almost like lightning, is where my system, you remember the scales, the ones and zeros, I've learned to what that is and how to access it. And so that is where I've kind of dematerialized traditional Chinese medicine, which was acupuncture and herbs and everything. Well, everything's energy. So I do that through WhatsApp. I work with athletes through WhatsApp, poker players. I have retainers that I work, just everything's being done. So lightning network, instant. But then if you come down to the base layer, which is the decentral, which is the Bitcoin base layer, it's very heavy, slow, and difficult to change. But that's where the gold is. So the lightning is a method, is my technique. It's built on top of ones and zeros. That's where I earn my money. But what I've started to do more is look for the deep patterns in that decentralized base layer, and that's where we change ourselves. And so that sort of the Bitcoin is, you can see it's amazing how I came up with that base layer in Lightning a few days ago at the swimming pool. But when you want to change yourself, it's the hardest thing in the world. But then when you start seeing the whole of it, you can see the Chinese understood it, but they just there wasn't the language of the tech there, the instant stuff. It was slower. But now with Bitcoin, it's just like, how come Bitcoin came just as it's my matrix. Bitcoin's come along. I'm like, holy shit, this thing's exactly what's needed at this time to have a revolution of the mind and to change humanity. So I'm kind of like a Bitcoiner, but I'm a truth maximalist. But the two are interrelated. You can't separate them.
Rob, I think
truth
the point
maximalist.
about
I love that. sorry, Luke.
No, it's okay. I just liked your point about how you say that, say the Chinese, they had an idea of this philosophy. What I love about this, one part about Bitcoin in general, is that you can see that humanity has been trending towards this for a really long time, really trying to get to some kind of wisdom or philosophy or something. I was talking on my only other podcast appearance than this one in the Bitcoin world with John Ballas, and about how the Vikings had their own wisdom tradition that kind of aimed towards something like Bitcoin being the part of the inheritance that actually lives on after death. They had a whole thing about there's nothing that lives on after death except your reputation, and Bitcoin is I think the thing that can do that. But this is just me saying that I think these parallels, I love to see this because I want to make the connections between the wisdom of humanity that comes out in Bitcoin in such new ways. So I think that was great that you said that.
And just using those words, like wisdom is knowing self. So I think humanity doesn't know itself. And I think Bitcoin is a mirror back to be able to start seeing ourselves and therefore more wisdom. There are people throughout the centuries who have understood. And my favorite, Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching. If you look at that, you just put Bitcoin. It just fits in like Bitcoin does without doing. Bitcoin, it's like, because Bitcoin is the Tao. It's the principles of one. It's zero. It's neutral, and so it's something part of nature. And then, and also Krishnamurti, if he was still alive, he'd be caning Ethereum. He would be like Max Kaiser, but without the screaming. He was a truth maximalist, and truth can only be understood by the self authority, by looking within. Everything else are philosophies and concepts, but if you want to know the truth about yourself, don't look for any religion or guru. It comes from observation of self. And I think he'd be a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm going to write about that in the book. So yeah.
Absolutely. Like thought that popped into my head, Bitcoin. Bitcoin. yeah nice little flirt with Vikings there, Luke. Thank you very much. We love Vikings on this show, don't we?
That's a running joke, Rob. I'm sorry.
I have a client who
the thing I was about to say was like Bitcoin provides you with the eyes of the kid in H.C. Anderson's novel, The Emperor's New Clothes. So you can see, you put on these goggles and you can see that none of the emperors have clothes. They're all naked. So
that's so beautiful. And when someone was saying about inflation, we were talking about currencies and things, and the thought that came to me was like the ego. When someone's working on a legacy and a massive ego, it inflates, and truth, a hard money that's completely truthful, and it goes into that law. I'm not too good on the laws, but that will pierce that bubble, like in inflation, like and so when you have a big ego, like some of the biggest egos on Twitter. I suppose
My star will continue to rise. Let's
yeah.
say that.
Nico showed me that video. Oh my god!
We had a laugh.
Yeah, I was
Not naming any names or
Oh, no.
anything, but
and
Gucci bags is another.
Nassim Taleb. So he wrote a book, Anti-Fragile, and therefore anyone who writes a book, like you start seeing the patterns. Well, he's really fragile, and so he tries to make himself really big and strong because that's important to him. But in fact, he's just suppressing his shadow weakness, his shadow fragility, and so the bigger the bubble, and so truth has to be kept to the pin has to be kept away from the bubble, and Bitcoin is the pin.
Yeah, I view like debates on what truth is and what it isn't are sort of pointless because, as I view it, true and false are like the binary of any language.
Sure.
We cannot come to a consensus on the meaning of any other word without first having laid the foundations out for what language means at all, and that is something is either true or false. Everyone intuitively knows what those two words mean, because otherwise there couldn't be any other words. Like dog, is that a dog? Yes or no? And we know what a dog is because we know what true and false is. We know the question. We couldn't have language without true and false. So there's no point in debating the meaning of the word truth. The word truthfulness is completely different, and inner truth and like all these other concepts that are built around truth, they are different. But the very binary meaning of true and false, that's yin and yang, 1 and 0, yes or no. Everyone knows that.
Yeah. And for me, the thing that I know when I observe myself and I am fearful or I'm angry, or that's the thing I know is, and there's no separation. I'm getting into my work, but there's no separation from the external and internal. And when we say I shouldn't be angry, then you have conflict because we all are angry. We all are fearful. We all are greedy. And so when the church says don't be this, then it creates conflict immediately. If you try and live from the rules of the Bible, you're going to.
They're impossible. They're impossible. They're asking the impossible.
Well, they create violence.
Yes, and that's why I think they should be taken with a large grain of salt, because they're impossible to live up to. What you can do is that you can notice that you become angry, and that will help you stop being angry because you noticed it.
No, absolutely.
But that's the extent you can control it. Sure. You cannot control it to a larger extent.
Well, if you do, at some point you're not. So they can
exactly
control, these protocols, but these things as these other shit coins, whatever you want to call them. But Bitcoin's done. It's there.
It's about paying attention, really. Paying attention to whatever thoughts come into your head. Paying attention to the outside world. Paying attention is connected to everything.
Yeah,
and that's why it takes a very
sharp mind, Knut. You need a very sharp mind to observe, and people are so conditioned to not.
Yeah, TikTok, for instance, it destroys people's attention, and we're programmed to pay attention for a microsecond and then switch to something else. Yes. Oh, that was a funny cat. Oh, look at this funny dog, and that's it. And oh, I got a notification here. Someone poked me, or someone waved at me. Like, it's all pointless. So, like, that's a life hack. Turn off your notifications and take back the driver's seat of whenever you check. I mean, don't stop checking your notifications, of course, but choose when.
Decentralised mind, fiat mind, and then that's where Bitcoin is the orange pill.
Yeah,
hopefully. We'll see.
Hey, I think that's maybe a great summary here, Rob. I'm looking forward to seeing your book as it sounds like it's still partially in progress, right?
It's in progress.
So coming out hopefully within the next few months, or maybe something like that.
Yeah, a few months.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to that very much. And Rob, can you say a little bit about maybe where anyone could find your work, or who would like to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So on Twitter, I'm at Rob Brinded. I do, my profession is I work one-on-one with clients. So if anyone is interested, you can DM me on Twitter. I have my website is robbrinded.com, where it has more about how I do my work. And I also have a new website that I've just created. It's a little light on content. It's put all my podcasts there, and that's masterless.life. And fundamentally, it's about being masterless, like, your own keys, you're in charge of them and everything, and self-authority. So masterless.life. And I go more into sort of samurai, like this. I like mixed martial arts, samurai, and how in our minds we have a dojo, and it's about not fighting, and how the katana is molded. So masterless.life is more where I took my name out of it. It's more about the content. Yeah.
There you see, Luke. We can do ninjas instead of fucking Vikings, you know?
Never going to give up on the Vikings, Knut.
We can do pirates, we can do ninjas, we can do zombies, we can do robots, we can do all sorts of things, but no fucking Vikings. Okay, this has been great, Rob. Thank you for coming on to the Freedom Footprint Show.
Thank you
thanks,
so much,
Luke.
guys.
Thank Nico. Thank
Thank
God
you.
there's no Vikings here. And yeah, see you around. See you next time. Don't miss.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And
conference.
if you'd like to support us, the best way to do that at the moment is over the Fountain app or any of the other value for value apps. If you want to give us a boost, we'll give you a mention on the next show. So feel free to be as inappropriate as you like. Knut will enjoy those, I think. And as well, if you want to get in touch with any of us, all our Twitter handles are here. I'm at BTCPseudoFinn. Nico is at OmniFinn. Knut Svanholm is as it's pronounced. So, the name Knut is a hard one for some people. But hey, so I really enjoyed this discussion, Rob. Looking forward to your book. Anything else? Anyone before we wrap up?
I'll see you in Amsterdam. I'll be going, so hopefully you'll be there.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll grab a beer and talk more about writing.
Perfect.
And yeah, so buy all our shit and listen to all our stuff, and keep on hodling and whatever
Expand
other
your freedom
use
footprint.
case. Expand your freedom footprint. Increase more freedom dioxide. There's nothing to fear but fear itself.
And maybe one more thing to add. Please do check Knut's new book on our MASH version of it. So you can actually use Lightning to read the book chapter by chapter. The address is 21million.consensus.network. And it works great. It's a fantastic new way. And I think this is going to be the future of how a lot of content is going to be consumed. Great way to onboard new people to Lightning and to Bitcoin, because they are planning, the MASH team is planning to add credit card payments. So actually what you can do when you want to buy a book, instead of using your like fiat account and whatnot, you can just buy Lightning Satoshis to the wallet and use that to read the book. And then if you have some leftover or the value goes up or whatever you want to do, you can just move them to your own wallet, like self-hosted or whatever. So really excited about that. And big shout out to MASH for building it.
We should tell MASH to start an escort service and call it Bangers and Mash. What do you think about that?
Sounds like a good idea.
Value for value, you know?
Yeah.
All right. This has been great. Once again, thank you, Rob. See you in the next one.